All right. Do we have anybody else trying to join?
No, we're 5 minutes in. So if you want to, let's see here.
All right, y'all, grab your wine, bubble water, tea, yoga mat, etc. We're going to get settled, and now we've already waited for others to join. Feel free to post in the comments where you're tuning in from. I think I know where most of y'all are from, but go ahead and share with everybody. And for everyone that's not familiar with this group, Women Who Splitboard Colorado is a community of female splitboarders who are devoted to learning, sharing knowledge, and empowering each other to be confident in their backcountry decision-making skills. We're excited for you to join us, and we're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves real quick. I'm Summer. I'm in Glenwood Springs. I'm one of the moderators.
Carbondale.
Thank you, Jamie.
I'm Jamie. I live in Carbondale, and I am presenting tonight.
I'm Rayma.
Allie.
Oh, go, Allie.
I'm an eagle.
I'm Rayma. I'm in Buena Vista.
I'm Sarah. I'm in Gunnison.
All right.
Kelly. I'm in Breckenridge.
Yeah. So we're all over the mountains of Colorado. So I'm going to introduce you to our two beautiful ladies who are presenting today. We've got Kelly Lovely. She's a doctor of physical therapy and a former snowboard instructor. While she loves helping people rehab from injuries and get back to the activities they love, she believes that having some basic knowledge of muscle groups and body mechanics can go a long way to prevent injury in the first place. Her first love is snowboarding. She's been snowboarding for 25 years and worked 7 years as a professional snowboard instructor at Jackson Hole Mountain Resort. She's been skiing and snowboarding the backcountry for more than 15 years and has her wilderness first responder and AIARE Avalanche Level 2 training. Jamie has been snowboarding for 24 years. She's got a passion for connecting within to find peace as she's struggled with anxiety and depression. Meditation has subtly aided in liberating her to freedom during hard times in her life. She compares yoga to swimming because she can forget about life while moving her body in shapes that help her feel beautiful inside and out. She loves sharing her passion of meditation and yoga with others in order to help them find their flow through tough times. So ladies, go ahead and take it away.
All right. So, share my screen here. Whoop. Hang on. Let's go back. Let's see. All right. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
All right. So, here is our talk, and we're going to get started with Jamie.
Hey everyone, so go ahead and just get comfortable in your seat. Maybe place your feet on the ground so you can feel grounded. Go ahead and shrug your shoulders a couple of times. Inhaling, rolling your shoulders up, and exhaling, rolling your shoulders down your back. And then you can place your palms facing up on your knees if you want more energy for the night, or place them down on your knees if you need more grounding. And you can flutter your eyes closed, or you can just focus on a spot in front of you, a drishti point in front of you, and just start tuning into your body, into your breath. So inhaling through the nose and exhaling out the mouth, letting any tension or any stress go from the day. And we're going to do a meditation and a visualization. So go ahead and picture a majestic mountain. Any mountain that you can clearly visualize. The more detailed the visualization, the better. So I love the mountain, Chair Mountain. It's on the way to Marble, and it's basically, I call it God's chair, and it can be whatever God you believe in, but it looks like a giant could sit in the mountain. The mountain is standing tall and strong. It has been there for thousands of years. All around the mountain, the weather changes from beautiful sunny skies to hurricane force winds, to snow and ice, but the mountain always stands firm. The activity just whirls around the mountain, but does not affect it day to day. Connect back with your breath, inhaling through your nose, exhaling out through your mouth. Now sit quietly and focus your breath going in and out. Relax and breathe. As thoughts come in and out of your mind, picture yourself as the mountain. Sit up tall and strong like the mountain. Firmly grounded to the earth, let the thoughts and stress and anxiety whirl around you without affecting you. The thoughts of people and situations that are pressuring you are just thoughts, and you are the mountain. You are sitting strong. You are who you have always been, regardless of the weather happening around you. Sit with the feeling of power and majesty. Breathe in, breathe out slowly, and relax for as long as you feel comfortable doing so. We'll take a couple more deep breaths on your own time. And then go ahead and wiggle your fingers and your toes and just start to flutter your eyes back open. And I'll pass it back to Kelly.
All right. Thank you, Jamie. That I feel very relaxed, which is awesome. All right. So I guess what I'll do to get started here is give a little bit of history about how I got into snowboarding and how I got into physical therapy. Get a little bit into splitboarding, and then we'll go into the injury prevention stuff. So I grew up in Summit County in Frisco. I started skiing when I was 3, and then I switched to snowboarding when I was 12. And I absolutely fell in love with the sport. When I was in high school, I did some competitions. I did border cross and a little bit of slope style. And then after high school, I moved to CU Boulder to go to college there. And when I was there, I joined the snowboard team. And there is a big freestyle focus. So I spent a lot of time in the park. But with the snowboard team, I also had the opportunity to go to Switzerland. And that was my first time really riding giant mountains. And I was like, wow, this is actually what I want to do. And I want to go in the backcountry. I want to ski powder. So I took my AVI level 1 through the CU outdoor program. And I wanted to get into the backcountry. And at the time, this was the early 2000s, there wasn't really a lot of splitboard technology available. I knew one person who splitboarded, and I borrowed his splitboard. It was like a 161. It was kind of a disaster, so I tried snowshoeing. And eventually I just was like, I'm just gonna learn how to ski, because everyone I knew in the backcountry was a skier. I didn't really know any snowboarders. After college, I moved to Jackson Hole. And part of it was chasing a boy, but part of it was wanting to snowboard bigger mountains. And Jackson Hole has a really expensive ski pass. So I wanted to work for the mountain to get my pass for free. And the job that I chose was snowboard instructor. And it ended up being something that I absolutely love to do. And I ended up staying in Jackson and teaching for 7 years in the winter. And during my days off, I spent pretty much all of my time in the backcountry, did my level 2, and did quite a bit of skiing. And then I also had some time where I borrowed some of my friends' splitboards where I would get after it in the Tetons as well. So really spending a lot of time in the mountains and pushing my riding. And it was really fun. And I loved instructing because instructing, when you learn how to be an instructor, it basically breaks down the mechanics of snowboarding. It really kind of simplifies everything to break down the motions of going from toe side to heel side back to toe side. So you kind of learn the minutia of exactly like what your ankle's doing, what your knees doing, what your hips are doing, and you basically deconstruct everything. And so that way you know how to basically teach it to another person. And then when you take a client out, you can look at their riding and really be able to analyze their movements and figure out why they may be having a struggle that they're having. For instance, a lot of people that I worked with had trouble turning on steeps on their toe sides. So it's a matter of looking at, okay, where's their upper body position? What are they doing with their knee? That kind of thing. And that's where I got really into movement analysis and really enjoyed nerding out on that stuff. And then towards the end of my 20s, as I was approaching 30, I was like, do I really want to do this the rest of my life? I realized that you can't work as an instructor if you get hurt. And I saw so many friends get hurt and have to rehab from injury. And I kind of started thinking about it. I was like, I want to be on that rehab side. It definitely plays to what I'm interested in body mechanics. And I can basically become a PT and help skiers and snowboarders that way. So after that soul searching, I moved back to Colorado. And I went to PT school at CU down at the Anschutz Medical Campus in Aurora. And I started PT school in 2014 and then graduated with my doctor of physical therapy in 2016. And since I graduated, I've been working mostly in outpatient clinics. So a lot of orthopedic injuries. But what a lot of people don't know is that if you have any vestibular dysfunction, like vertigo, or maybe your eyes aren't tracking correctly, or if you've had a concussion and you're trying to rehab from that, those are some things that PTs can help with. So that has been my professional life. And it was definitely hard to go back to school and kind of like give up my life of snowboarding in Jackson. So I don't know if you guys can hear me talk over this, but this is just like some video clips of me snowboarding since I got back to Colorado over the last 5 years. I eventually got a splitboard, and I've definitely spent all my time in the backcountry on my days off splitboarding. And since I'm a weekend warrior now, it's even more important to really focus on staying healthy and injury prevention because I'm not on the mountain every day. So hopefully what I talk about today is going to help keep you guys strong and healthy. So when you do get after it on your day off, you can totally maximize your day, have some adventures. And this is just like fun footage from the last few years. This is in Jackson. A lot of the videos from Colorado. And just wanted to share a little bit just because I love splitboarding and just to kind of get the stoke up. So. And this is in Jackson on a trip we did a couple years ago. And this is in Summit County a few years ago as well. And this year I haven't been going out as much because I had the baby and because of the snowpack, but I'm definitely excited for more stable seasons in the future. And so anyway, just to stay healthy and get after it, I'll talk about some types of injuries that you can have. Some injuries that you have are acute or traumatic. So you fall and you break a bone or you tear your muscle or a ligament. And then there's other injuries that are more from overuse or they're more chronic. So maybe you develop a tendonitis after several weeks of touring. So with prevention, we're going to talk a little bit about proper technique, some of the gear that's out there that can help prevent injury. And then we're going to talk about like the strength, stability, and mobility of different parts of your body and how they interplay. And I'm going to focus on the foot, ankle, knee, and hip, just because those are the parts of your body that are most directed towards snowboarding. And they're all kind of interconnected. So I'm going to go kind of back and forth with a little bit of this stuff. And if you have any questions along the way, definitely write them down. Hopefully I will answer those questions kind of like farther along in the PowerPoint, but we can definitely take a lot of questions about that stuff in the end. So foot and ankle. Essential to snowboarding. So motion in your ankle helps transfer your weight or your center of mass from one edge to the other. So if you look at the picture on the right, have the 4 motions the ankle does there. So you guys can all kind of play along. If you bring your foot up towards your face, you can feel the muscles in the front of your shin contract to do that. That's called dorsiflexion. If you point your foot away like a dancer, your calf muscles do that. That's plantar flexion. Inversion is if you swing your ankle in, and then eversion is if you swing your ankle out. And so you need a lot of ankle strength to snowboard. When you're on your heel edge, being able to dorsiflex your ankle prevents you from catching that toe edge. And then plantar flexion is just the ability to maintain your toe edge so you don't catch your heel edge. And you also want good mobility in your ankle for skinning. Let's see, there we go. So there's some technology out there for splitboarding specifically that helps maximize your ankle mobility. The left picture is a Spark R&D binding, and it basically lets you move the high back from its forward lean position to kind of bringing it back. So that way your ankle can go into more plantar flexion, especially when you're kind of pushing off and the foot is behind you. And then of course there's some backcountry specific snowboard boots that have a little thing that open up again for more ankle mobility. Skiers have had this in their equipment in walk mode forever. And so I'm, pretty excited that there's some split tech out there. I don't have special boots myself. I just kind of loosen my boot up all the way for the way up and then tighten it to go down. So some types of injuries, an ankle sprain is depicted in that top center picture. And what that is it's a tear or a stretch of the ligaments in your ankle. Usually it happens if you kind of roll your ankle in and it strains the ligaments on the outside of your ankle. And a ligament is basically a thick tissue that holds bone to bone. So it basically holds your joint together. You can definitely sprain your ankle in a snowboard boot, especially because we have soft boots. But if you sprain your ankle doing anything else, I think it's an overlooked injury because it's so common. Everyone has sprained their ankle. And so some people don't take the rehab quite as seriously. And then if your ankles are weak, you're more prone to re-spraining it again, something like that. So it's important to always rehab from something where you sprain an ankle. The picture below that with that gray foot, that shows the Achilles tendon. It's an Achilles tendonitis there. A tendon attaches your muscle to the bone. So the calf muscles run into the tendon and they attach to the top of your heel bone called the calcaneus. And an Achilles tendonitis can develop if your tendon is weak, could develop through repetitive motion, or it could even develop if your boot isn't fit right and the back of your heel is rubbing wrong in your boot. On the left there is your plantar fascia. It's a little picture of plantar fasciitis. And you can see that the plantar fascia connects to the heel bone on the underneath of your foot. And the absolute best way to prevent developing plantar fasciitis is to make sure your calves don't get tight, because then you don't get this tug of war between the Achilles tendon and the plantar fascia. And then my favorite muscle that I'm going to talk about with the foot and ankle, that is one that a lot of people don't know about, is your posterior tibialis. That is that muscle that's highlighted on the right. And the tendon is that yellow part. And it comes down, it wraps around the back of the ankle bone on the inside of your foot, and it attaches to your arch. And so this muscle is a huge player in supporting the arch of your foot. It is also the muscle that inverts your foot. So if you swing your foot in, It's the posterior tibialis that does that. And with the plantar fascia and the little muscles in your foot, this guy works a lot to maintain that arch. So if you develop a tendonitis in that muscle, sometimes it can cause your arch to collapse over time and can cause a lot of foot problems. So there is some stuff out there that can help. I don't have Karakoram bindings on myself, but these bindings look super cool. They have this thing called Flex Lock. And what these pictures are trying to mimic are just kind of a slippery skin track. We're kind of moving into spring when all the skin tracks are going to be frozen and slippery. And just imagine your downhill foot on that skin track and you're trying to get purchase with your skin. You're going to be kind of rolling over onto your arch of your foot to kind of push off the inner part of your foot. And as you do that, your arch will kind of collapse a little bit, and that puts a lot of strain on that posterior tibialis tendon. And so you can see that's a lot of work for the inner part of your foot with that flex lock disengage that kind of shows it. And then their technology stiffens up the binding so that way your ankle isn't as mobile in the binding. So that's kind of a cool thing to help with skinning and help put your ankle in a good position. This is something pretty unique to splitboarding because skiers have hard boots. They have a much easier time skinning than snowboarders with soft boots. Another thing that you can do that's really helpful is put a footbed in your boot. I have a Superfoot footbed. You can get custom ones. But if you have just a little bit of arch support in there, that can go a long way to create a stable platform for your foot to push up from when you're skinning. So in some ways to help your ankle. Strengthening exercises that you can do. The left shows just some ankle motion with a resistance band. So if you have a resistance band, these are really good to strengthen your ankle. When you're doing any exercise, you want to make sure you do it slow and smooth both ways. And you're really trying to control, like if you're pulling against the band, when you go back in, you want to make sure it's smooth and not shaky. So everything is slow and smooth. Working on your balance is also huge. There's a person there standing on a Bosu ball, but any single leg balance or single leg balance on an unstable surface will activate those ankle muscles and the foot muscles and get them stronger. You can do little towel crunches with your toes. If you do that, that kind of strengthens the muscles in your foot that help support the arch. And then the bottom right picture shows somebody doing a heel raise. So if you stand off the edge of a step and you just go up on your tiptoes and then go back down, you want to make sure that you really control that way back down so it's nice and smooth and slow, and that'll get the tendons stronger. In this particular exercise, the person's holding a little ball between their ankles, and what that ball does is it kind of gets you to invert your foot a little bit, and so that strengthens that posterior tibialis as well. So that's another good little ankle strengthener. Some maintenance for your foot and ankle. If you guys don't own a foam roller, you should get one. They are amazing. I love it because you can roll out tight and knotted muscles, and it basically just increases blood flow to the whole muscle. So it can recover and heal faster. It can also kind of activate the muscles so they're more effective during the day. So you can foam roll before or after activity. Rolling out your foot on a ball is also really nice, like if your feet are sore from a long tour. And then the pictures on the right just show some stretches. So stretching your plantar fascia on your foot, you can kind of rub your foot with your foot in that stretch. And then some calf stretches as well. So the knee, go into the knee. It's one of the most popular joints to injure while you're skiing or snowboarding. And I mentioned skiing because we spend a lot of time split skiing when we're getting out of nasty places on our split board. So especially on a split board, we don't have releasable binding. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. So some common mechanisms of injury, like how people hurt their knee, is their knee either kind of caving in, twisting, or both. If you do that kind of dramatically, you could tear something, twist it, sprain it. And then the second one I mentioned is poor alignment. So if your knee is in poor alignment over time, repetitive motion can kind of give you one of those chronic injuries. So how to prevent that is good stance on your snowboard and good technique, arch support and ankle stability. So if you're curious, if you want to try, you can stand up, and as you stand, or if you're sitting, once you're standing, if you roll your ankle in, so try to kind of collapse your foot in, almost like that picture that I showed earlier of that guy trying to skin up that slippery skin track. You will see as soon as you roll your ankle in, your knee kind of caves in as well. So if your ankle's in a good spot, your knee is going to be in a good spot. And also hamstring and hip strength. So, which we'll get to in a little bit. So here's a picture of the knee. The femur is your thigh bone on top. The tibia is your shin bone below on the joint. And if you rub the inside part of your knee, the medial collateral ligament is your MCL. And that basically prevents your knee from kind of collapsing in and having the joint open up that way. So if you were to hit the outside of your knee, you could potentially hurt the MCL. The LCL, lateral collateral ligament, is on the outside of your knee, and that prevents the knee from kind of collapsing to the outside. Your ACL is a big one, and the ACL and the PCL live on the inside of the knee. And what the ACL does is it prevents the tibia or the shin bone from sliding forward on your femur. So if your lower leg suddenly slides forward relative to your upper leg, you could tear your ACL. And then you have your medial and lateral meniscus. The menisci are basically cushions that sit on top of your tibia, and they absorb shocks. And the best way to injure a meniscus is if you have your knee fully bent in full flexion and you twist, that can often hurt your meniscus. And one example that I can think of is I've treated a couple of roofers actually with meniscus tears, and they kind of walk around in a duck walk, twisting to grab things all day. And that can definitely happen snowboarding too. If you land and your knee is in full flexion and you twist funny, you can definitely hurt your knee that way. All right, another thing to keep in mind with ligaments, and I definitely want to bring this up for Allie and I, and because this is a women's meeting, when you have a baby, your hormones relax the ligaments in your body, so that way your pelvis can open up and the baby can come out. And those hormones kind of stick around in your body for 3 months after birth, and if you're breastfeeding, even longer. So if you've just had a baby, like me and Allie, you're definitely at higher risk of a ligament injury just because those tissues are a little bit looser than they otherwise would be. So that's kind of a women's specific thing. Back to this picture that shows the knee on the left kind of caving in a little bit because the ankle isn't supported. The knee is in a much better position relative to the foot in the picture on the right. And then canted pucks are a new thing that just came out. I really want them. I haven't tried them yet, but I've always had canted footbeds on my bindings, and that basically just allows you to have a little bit wider of a stance without putting your knee in a funky spot. And so now they have the canted pucks for splitboarding. So it's definitely something that I want to try because that can definitely help put your knee in an optimal position. So moving up to the hip. The hip is a ball and socket joint with 3 degrees of freedom, meaning it moves a lot. So the femur basically is the ball and the pelvis is the socket. So flexion is the motion of bringing your leg forward. Extension is the motion of bringing your leg back behind you. Adduction is swinging it in. Abduction is swinging it out. Internal rotation is if you just kind of twist your whole femur bone in towards midline, and external rotation is twisting it out. And so hip muscles are a really important component of core and back strength, and we're going to talk about how they affect the knee as well. So hip flexors, they bring your leg forward. These are huge for skinning. And here are a bunch of different muscles that help flex your hip. The tensor fascia lata, or TFL muscle that's pictured on the left, is kind of a fun one to talk about because the bottom part of that muscle inserts into your IT band. So the IT band is that thick fibrous tissue that goes down the outside of your leg. And you may have talked to somebody who has IT band syndrome or has tight IT bands at some point in your lives. But IT band syndrome is where the bottom of the IT band, where it inserts kind of right on the outside of your knee, rubs and gets painful. So if you have a lot of like lateral outside knee pain, could be your IT band. And one of the best ways to get that to loosen up is to make sure that muscle doesn't get tight. So that's kind of a key player in that type of knee problem. Your rectus femoris is one of your quads. And so if you're sitting down and you put your hand on top of your thigh and you straighten your knee, you'll feel that quad muscle contract. So the rectus femoris straightens your knee, but also if you bring your knee back down and you're sitting, march your hip up, so kind of raise your thigh up off the chair, you'll also feel that muscle contract doing that. So it's a major hip flexor. And then one of my favorite muscles to talk about on the right there, the last two pictures, the iliopsoas. The psoas muscle attaches to your lumbar spine. So your lumbar spine is the bottom of your spinal column. And this big hip flexor muscle attaches to it. So you can imagine that the psoas muscle is really important for back strength and stability. If your psoas is strong, your back is going to be stronger just because it attaches in there. But you can also imagine if the muscle gets tight, it can also pull on your low back. And I'm kind of a nerd for snowboard movies. And if you've watched Travis Rice's movies, I think it's the fourth phase. I don't remember which one it is, but he hurts his back and he needs to get a back surgery. And in the film, it shows his MRI. And his psoas muscle is absolutely huge. So we know that snowboarders use their psoas a lot. So that's just like a fun little tidbit. I totally want to watch that movie again now to see that. And so to kind of prevent those hip flexors from getting angry, you want proper skinning technique. I think when a lot of people start out skinning, they lift their ski up a lot. And so they're almost like marching. I'm sure you guys have seen that, versus driving your toe forward and getting that glide. And you can imagine if you just sitting here, if you just lift your leg up again, like you just did, you can just kind of feel how much those hip flexors are working, and imagine the weight of your ski boot and binding on that hip flexor for a whole tour. So proper technique can definitely take some of the strain off your hip flexors. Once they get stronger, that soreness does go away eventually. I just remember the first couple tours I ever went on in my life, my hip flexors were screaming at me. But foam rolling and stretching is how you can help mitigate that soreness and keep your hip flexors healthy for skinning. All right, hip extensors. So these are the muscles that bring your leg back behind you. So your glute max and your hamstrings. And so you can kind of just imagine based on these pictures, you use those muscles a lot with skinning as well. So really getting that push off. And then the glutes also help you maintain proper position on your snowboard when you're riding, especially on your toe wedge. And your glutes are also a huge component of core strength. The stronger your glutes are, the better off your back is going to be. I'll talk a little bit about that. So here are some pictures of me snowboarding. And in the pictures on the left, you can see my hips are back a little bit, like my pelvis is back and my hip is in relative flexion. And so if you want to stand up, you can kind of try this, where if you stand and you kind of bend at the waist a little bit and bring your hips back, you can feel the muscles in your low back. If you just touch them, you'll feel them turn on. And so if you're riding in a semi kind of like hunched over position like that, that's a lot of strain to put on your low back throughout the day, especially if you have a big backpack like that second picture. If you squeeze your glutes, you can bring your hips forward, and that's bringing your center of mass more forward, more over your toe edge, and you can feel your back muscles working significantly less. So this is definitely one of those things that I notice in my riding. I tend to hunch over a lot, so it was not hard for me to find the picture on the left. Eventually found the picture on the right. But it's definitely something that I work on, just keeping my glutes strong so I can get my hips all the way forward over my toe edge to reduce strain on my low back. especially with that backpack. All right, some strengthening exercises for your glutes. Bridges. If you do a bridge, just make sure you're squeezing your glutes and you're not cheating by using your back muscles. I think deadlifts are honestly one of the best strengthening exercises you can do. And you don't have to use a lot of weight to do a deadlift. It really does strengthen your glutes and your back. And then you can do some donkey kicks. Those are just some examples of ways that you can strengthen that muscle. And then the hip abductors. These are my favorites. They bring your leg out to the side. And I think every physical therapist loves this muscle because if you come in for an ankle sprain or if you come in for back pain, pretty much anything below the shoulders, we're gonna give you an exercise that strengthens this muscle because this one's weak on a lot of people, or even if it's strong, it may not be firing correctly. So it brings your leg out to the side like the picture on the right, but it also stabilizes your pelvis. So that picture of the two skeletons walking in the middle, the one on the right shows a weak gluteus medius. And as a person walks, it causes their pelvis to kind of tilt and shift. And over time, that can cause some low back pain because you're getting a lot of shearing forces on there. And it's just not very stable. So if you think of the core being your abs, your back muscle, and your pelvis, having a strong glute can really keep everything solid there. Internal rotation and external rotation, little tiny muscles in your hip do this. So you can try these motions if you're just sitting on your chair, what those do. One of your major rotator muscles is your piriformis, and the sciatic nerve comes out right below the piriformis. So sometimes you get sciatica from having a tight piriformis muscle. That's another injury that we treat a lot in the PT world. So there's a lot going on in the hip here. And so the hip muscles work to put your knee in the best position. So here's a picture of somebody doing a squat. The good position is on the left. And in that position, the person's knees are tracking over their feet. And on the right, you can see the knees are kind of collapsing inwards. And we talked about that inward collapse a little bit when talking about the ankle, but it's really the hip muscles that can also help keep those knees out and wide. And not only is the person on the right kind of straining the tissues on the inside of their knee, kind of putting little stress on that MCL area, but it's also causing the kneecap to track kind of funny. So if you're sitting down, put your hand over your kneecap and straighten your knee. And as you do that, you'll feel your kneecap tracking upward, up towards your thigh. And then if you bend your knee, you'll feel that kneecap tracking downward. So with the kneecap, or with the knee flexing and extending, bending, your kneecap is moving up and down. And so the person on the right with the bad form, if every time they bend their knee, they end up in this like crooked position, their kneecap isn't going to be tracking right in that knee joint. And that can lead to a lot of kneecap pain kind of on the inside of the knee. And that's another thing that we treat a lot, especially like a lot of women kind of have that kneecap pain, and strengthening the hip is a good way to prevent that from happening. All right, how that applies to snowboarding, it's your stance. So picture on the left is me kind of with my knees in. Picture on the right, I'm actively driving my knees wide by squeezing those muscles in my hip. And it just kind of puts you in a stronger position on your snowboard. Over time, riding with your knees in the best position is going to decrease the likelihood of developing that kind of like chronic kneecap pain. But it's also going to reduce your chance of injury, because if you're riding like the picture on the left and your knee is already collapsed in and you hit like a funky bump or something, it could just be that little bit more motion that causes you to sprain your MCL or something like that. Another thing to just kind of pay attention to is your stance on the snowboard. So you don't want your stance too wide, because then your knees will kind of still be on the inside of your feet, if that makes sense. Canted pucks are what help you have a wider stance with your knees still in the right position, because it kind of puts you at that angle. And then you can play with the angles of your bindings as well. So getting the right angle of your binding can really help with knee tracking and prevent long-term knee wear and tear. Okay, so do you have hip weakness? So I'm gonna lead you guys through a little test to see. Feel free to try this at home. You're gonna have to stand up, but if you don't want to, you can always do it later. And then we'll talk about the squat jump test and just kind of the single leg squat jump test. And there were some studies that were done in the PT world that looked at a lot of collegiate female soccer players, and if they had a positive finding on the squat jump test, they were way more likely to tear their ACL during the season. So these tests can be predictive if you have the hip weakness that could lead you down the road to injury. So single leg squat test, if you guys want to do it at home, what you'll do is you'll stand up on one leg and you're going to do a mini squat. You don't have to go down super far, but when you do it, you want to make sure that you're getting your hips and your butt back. Like in picture number 1, you don't want to just bend your knee forward over your toe like picture number 2. So make sure your knees don't go past your toes. Make sure you're sinking your hips back. And what you want to do is you want to look at your knee. And can you do that single leg squat without your knee collapsing inwards? So it should look more or less like picture 3. Picture 3, my pelvis is aligned. So I'm trying to kind of keep my trunk level. And I'm trying to make sure that my knee isn't falling in. It is a tiny bit, but not as bad as number 4. So number 4 is the knee falling in because of hip weakness. Or in number 5, you can see the knee is in a really good spot, but I'm cheating by bending my trunk. So if you do a couple slow single leg squats, does your knee wobble? That could be an indicator if your hip is weak. Another thing that you could try is like holding that position. So if you hold that position and you're holding your knee in the right spot where it's tracking kind of over the outside of your foot, it's not falling in. Can you feel the muscles in the side of your hip working to maintain that position? If you're feeling like this is really hard to do because your ankle is the weakest link, then you know you need to do some ankle strengthening too. So you can also try this test just like keeping a finger on something to help balance you. But that's kind of a good way to do like a little self-check at home. Can you do a single leg squat without these compensations? Some squat jump tests. You don't have to do it now, but one way that it is kind of fun to do this, if you just put your phone up and record yourself and put it in slow motion and do several in a row, you can really pick out if your knees are collapsing in as you're landing and taking off again. So that picture of me is demonstrating like a little bit extreme, but poor form, knees are falling in. Sometimes you might have one good squat jump, but then on the 10th one, that's when you start to see that fatigue. So you can kind of look at the endurance of those muscles and just kind of make sure that you're able to kind of maintain your knees in that correct alignment over time. And if you're like, okay, this is easy, try a single leg squat jump where you land with your hips kind of in that sunken position and see if you can hold it without any trunk wobbles or knee wobbles. And that's a really good kind of self-check, like, oh man, does my knee collapse in? Does it wobble? Is it hard to kind of like keep it straight and pointed forwards? That can show that you can work on the strength a little bit. So fun things to do at home to kind of test where you're at. Here's some exercises that help strengthen that muscle. Clamshells on the left there. Another one is if you stand up and you just squeeze your glute to bring your leg back at a 45-degree angle. So it's going back and then out to the side a little bit. Side planks are really good to strengthen your glutes. And then my favorite are the band walks. So if you put a band around your knees, you can also put it around your ankles or your feet to make it harder, depending on how stretchy of a band you might have. But you can see in the model there, that person's really trying to keep their knees out as they walk. So really trying to kind of externally rotate their femurs, pointing the knees out, keeping them over the toes as they walk. And you should feel the burn in your glutes when you do those lateral band walks. All right, here's another favorite exercise. This one correlates really well with skinning, I think. So this is called a lateral step down. And basically you're doing repeated mini single leg squats. And so you're trying to control your knee. You're trying to go nice and slow on the way down, and you just kind of control it down, tap your heel, stand back up. And if you can picture going up a skin track, especially one where the uphill ski side of the skin track's a lot higher than the lower side, you're doing a lot of step ups over the course of your skin using this motion. And if your hips are strong, you're gonna like put less strain on the knee over time. Again, just like being able to use those glutes to have a good strong step up on your tour. All right. So core and back. I'm not going to talk a ton about this just because there's not a ton of time. But I'm just going to go over just a couple of things. Number one, make sure you have a well-fitting backpack. You don't want one that's too big, because when it swings around, that can just kind of be a pain in the butt when you're snowboarding. And it really does affect your center of mass, and how that transfer of your center of mass when you're turning is just different when you have a pack on when you're splitboarding. Totally different than resort riding. And you want to make sure the backpack fits well, it's not swinging, and you've packed it correctly. And so you want to make sure you put the heaviest items in the middle closest to your body. You don't want the heavy things further away from your body. And then another thing to protect your back is to avoid repetitive bending and twisting. We talked about that with kind of that slide where I was demonstrating like kind of being hunched over and twisted. If you ride kind of in a hunched twist over time, your back muscles will probably get tired. And when you're tired, that's when you could be at a higher risk of injury. And then you want to strengthen your core. And strengthening your core is a big one. I could probably talk an hour on that. Here's a picture of somebody doing a plank. That's a great core exercise. But even as you sit here, I think one of my favorite core muscles, especially after recovering from having a baby, if you're sitting, you kind of want to sit up straight. And if you draw your belly button in towards your spine, so just kind of like sucking in your belly in a way that you're not holding your breath or anything, as you suck in your belly, you'll find yourself kind of almost sitting up a little bit straighter, and you'll feel that those inner core muscles, your lower abdominals, activate, and sometimes you can even feel it wrap around to your back. And so that muscle that really kind of sucks your core in, it's called your transversus abdominis, and it really is a canister that holds your core nice and stable. So that's a really good muscle to train. And then you also want to keep your back mobile. That picture on the upper right there is my favorite stretch. That's why I put it in. As snowboarders, we always kind of twist one direction. I'm goofy, so I'm always twisted towards my right. And I've found that when I do these stretches, I'm definitely a lot more limited trying to twist to the left. So I think implementing a stretch routine that kind of like undoes all the twists from snowboarding, so you don't end up with your body just kind of in a permanently twisted position, and your spine and muscles stay mobile in both directions. I can tell, even twisting to my left right now, I'm like, that is way tighter. And I know that's from years of snowboarding. So just kind of like getting back to what I just said with fatigue, when you're tired, you're more likely to get injured. And I think that's a huge thing with splitboarding wellness in general, is kind of know where you're at with your mental fitness for the day and your physical fitness for the day. And definitely don't bite off too big of an adventure, because that's when you get hurt, is when you're exhausted at the end of the day. So just kind of seeing where you're at, knowing what your body can do, and just kind of keep progressing from there. Start small, work your way up, and just by being out there every day, you're going to get a lot stronger. So that is the end of my bit, and we're going to have Jaime present. So I'm going to exit my screen.
Hey everyone. So if you just put your view on speaker view, then you can see me better. We're going to do some yoga. So if you have a yoga mat, go ahead and roll out your yoga mat. and get a drink of water if you would like. Will you guys put your thumbs up if you can hear me from there? Okay, great. So let's you guys get settled really quick. This is just going to be a 10-minute yoga session. So let's go ahead and start standing in mountain pose. So our feet are hip distance apart. You can rock back and forth on your feet a little bit. And then find all four corners of your feet. And then just go ahead and start steadying your stance and then start pulling up through your thighs, up from your knees, pull up through there. And then just like Kelly was saying, go ahead and draw your navel towards your spine. Roll your shoulders back, up and back and down. And then you can face your palms out and your chin is parallel with the floor. So we'll go ahead and inhale our arms to the sky. And then we'll exhale, we'll swan dive forward as our chest comes towards our thighs. Exhale. And then we'll just hang like a rag doll here. So you can grab opposite elbows and then just hang here and swing back and forth. Just loosening up the hamstrings, loosening up the lower back. And then on the next inhale, bring your hands to your shins and extend your spine long so that you have a flat back. And then exhale, forward fold. And then go ahead and bend your knees a lot. As you reverse swan dive, your arms come out to the side and they come up as on an inhale. And then exhale your hands to center. Lovely. Okay, we're gonna play around with some of what Kelly talked about. So bring your feet a little bit, like maybe if you're into your snowboard stance. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna bend our knees and we're gonna do some squat jumps. So we'll do it 5 rounds. So we squat and then jump a 180. And then squat and jump a 180. Squat and jump another 180. And then just keep going on the inhale, jump up, exhale, squat. Inhale up, exhale, squat. Inhale up, exhale, squat. And keep going. Let's do it 2 more times each side. So here's 1. And then here's 2. Okay. And then on your next, when you come back to center, we're going to turn to one side of your mat. So turn to one side of your mat, and we'll hop our feet out about 3 to 4 feet. So just hop your feet out into a wide-legged stance. You can put your hands on your hips, and then stand like you're a warrior goddess. So hands on the hips. You're rolling your shoulders on your back. Your legs are feeling soft. And then on the exhale, we'll come down with a flat back and bend forward into a wide-legged forward fold. So here you can grab opposite elbows and we'll sway back and forth. So catching your breath, just letting any stress melt away. And then we can move into some fluid movement. If you would like, you can go into a skandasana. So you bend one knee and bring your toes to point up to the sky. Inhale to center, exhale to the left. Inhale to center, exhale to the right. And that's a really nice stretch on the inside of your thigh. And then let's go go into interlacing our fingers behind our back, and we'll straighten the arms, and then we just come back to that forward fold. So opening up the shoulders here, stretching out the lower back, the legs are strong. Bring that navel to the spine. And then exhale, let the arms fall. Inhale for a flat back. Exhale, forward fold. And then let's go ahead and roll one vertebrae up at a time, coming back to standing. Step that back foot forward to meet the front foot. We'll meet back in mountain pose. So let's inhale, our arms to the sky. Exhale, let's forward fold. And then on the inhale, go ahead and walk your hands out to a plank. So the shoulders are aligned over the wrists. And if you want, you can go into a modified position by just leaving your knees on the floor. That's totally okay. But make sure you're drawing your navel to the spine. And then we're going to press back into downward facing dog. So we're trying to find a long spine here. We're walking out the legs so you can feel that stretch in your calves. So go ahead and lift one heel and let the other down. And then lift the other heel and let the other heel come down. Okay, awesome. So let's lift our right leg to the sky. We'll bring our knee, so our right leg is to the sky. We'll bring the right knee to the right wrist for a pigeon pose. So it's okay if your shin isn't totally parallel with the front of the mat, but our knee is close to our front right wrist, and then your back foot can angle in about 45 degrees. And then we're going to inhale, lift the chest, and then go ahead and tuck the toes under in the back of your leg, lift the knee, and then extend that knee a little bit further back and then set it down. And then we can inhale and exhale forward to wherever you feel comfortable. You can be on your elbows. You can come your forehead all the way down to the mat. But go ahead and rest here in pigeon pose. If that's hard on your knee, you can come to your back to a figure 4 pose. So you'll bring your ankle to the top of the knee and then reach through to hold on to either the thigh or the shin. So that's better for anyone with knee issues. And then slowly start to push through the heels of your hands to lift your body up back to center. And then slowly untuck that leg, curl the toes in the back, lift the right leg back to the sky, roll your leg around, and then replace it down next to the left leg. Lift your left leg to the sky, and then exhale, bring the knee to the left knee to the left wrist. And find your pigeon on the other side. So we'll lift, we'll tuck the toes under in the back, lift that back knee, and then replace it back down. Shine your heart forward. Inhaling, looking to the sky. And then exhale, walk your hands out to the front. Find where you're comfortable. And then you can also go to your back to find a modification. So this time the left leg would be on top of the, above the right knee. And then just reaching through to your thigh or your shin. And I always like to flex my feet here. So both my feet are active in my reclined figure 4 position. So take a couple more deep breaths here. And then on your next inhale, push down through the heels of your hands and then lift up and untuck that left leg. Exhale, bring the left leg to the sky. Replace it back down to meet the other leg. And then let's come to bringing the knees to the mat. And then just sit back on your heels. And then you can bring your head towards your screen. We'll go into a Baddha Konasana. So bring the soles of your feet together, like so. And let the knees rest out to the side. And then slowly roll your spine down and back, down onto the mat. So we're in a reclining Baddha Konasana. And then let's bring our right hand to our belly and our left hand to our heart. Tuck the shoulders underneath your back. And start to deepen your breath here. So we'll inhale through our nose, bring the breath down through the lungs, down into the belly. And we'll take 2 deep breaths here. Okay, and then exhale and roll to one side. You can use your bicep as a pillow. And then slowly push your body up to a seated position. And then bring your hands to heart center. And just picture that majestic mountain that you pictured in our visualization earlier. Feel your strong and steady core while the storm might ravage around you. Just always remember you're strong and majestic inside and out. And then we can bow our heads forward. Thank you for practicing with me tonight. Namaste.
Thank you, Jamie.
Were you guys able to hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, that was so good.
Awesome. Well, we're going to open it up to questions now.
I feel like if people want to ask questions, if you just want to unmute too, you could ask Kelly or Jamie personally, or if you want to type it in.
Okay, thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Kim.
Kelly,
Yeah, it was super good.
I have a question for Kelly, and I guess for Jamie too. What would you suggest, like any kind of modified stretching? Because I had a C-section, so that was like the most I have stretched since, and it was definitely like I was definitely feeling it. So is there any modifications, do you think, to kind of preventing, injury to that area, since it's kind of still sensitive?
Is your scar sensitive or just kind of the whole lower abdominal area? I had a C-section too.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So just like the lower abdominal area, pretty much. I think it's just because I haven't really, like I go on walks and everything, but I don't really actively stretch it. I'm just massaging it.
So I think that rotational stretches are fine to do, like that open book one. Anything where you're kind of like stretching your obliques, totally fine. What I also recommend is moving your scar. So if you kind of like, I don't know if you guys are grossed out by this, I don't have any shame.
This?
But yeah, if you like find your scar and then you kind of like, mine's down below, but if you kind of like bridge it with your fingers and then you kind of wiggle the tissue up and down and side to side, not so you're shearing it, but just kind of like getting the scar tissue moving so that way the skin is moving well on the muscles underneath.
Yes.
So doing a lot of scar massage is going to really help loosen that up so it's not pulling. And then I struggled a lot with diastasis when I got pregnant. So my six pack, my rectus abdominis just basically split apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it took me a really long time before I felt comfortable doing crunches, because if you do them too early postpartum, you can cause that to split a little bit more.
Yeah.
So the best exercise that I like to do is that drawing your navel in towards your spine. And what I'll do is like, I'll just kind of demonstrate on my yoga mat. So what you want to do is when you're on your back, you can basically like draw your navel in towards your spine. And as you do that, you'll feel your lumbar spine, your lower back flatten on the mat.
Yeah.
And you want to make sure that you're not cheating by like crunching or doing a pelvic tilt like that. So
Okay.
you can kind of feel like your lower abdominals draw in, belly buttons flat, and try to hold that contraction while marching one foot up at a time. It's actually really hard to do without letting your back arch.
Okay.
And that's one of the ways that you can kind of start training that muscle. And then once you've mastered like 1 foot at a time, you can kind of like suck in, stabilize the spine, draw in the belly, and then do like an up, up, down, down.
Okay.
And that one is where I'm at personally right now, is still working on that one without cheating. So
Yeah. Okay.
those are some good like inner core transversus abdominis exercises that'll really help hold the diastasis together so you don't like end up splitting your abs more.
Yeah.
And then once you do that, you can get into like planks, and the glute med exercises are going to be huge postpartum.
Yeah.
So that side of the hip muscle that we talked about.
Yeah, for sure. Everything's just kind of definitely just like spread out and split. So
when I was taking the pictures for the slideshow of myself and trying to demonstrate the exercises, I was like, oh my God, I suck at this. Like, it's so wobbly. It took me a while to get a picture. I'm like, I was good at this like before I got pregnant. Like, it's not
crazy.
easy.
It's crazy. So, thank you so much. This helps a lot.
Yeah, of course.
I have a question also. I sprained my ankle. So how long do I need to wait before I do splitboarding again?
How long ago did you sprain it?
A little over 2 weeks ago.
Is it still swollen?
I went to the chiropractor today and he said it was like kind of swollen, but I can't tell that it's swollen.
Did he manipulate it? Did he pop it for you?
He did. And he also did scraping, which was not my favorite, but he told me to do that every other day. So
yeah. So
end of a butter knife.
Yep. If you work on those ligaments, is it the outside of your ankle?
Inside.
Inside. Okay. So you had like an eversion sprain. So yeah, the more you kind of like work on those ligaments, that scraping motion, that basically helps arrange the collagen as your tissues heal. It kind of like helps the collagen arrange in more kind of like the parallel fashion versus like this mixture of weird scar tissue. So it helps it heal correctly, and it also increases the blood flow. I think that when you want to return to activity, you want to let pain be your guide. So if you go do something and you end up like in a lot of pain and it swells, that's your sign that you did too much. So I would say get a stretchy band and do those ankle exercises. And you may find like if you pull your ankle like against the band, the way back might be shaky, like as you go back, and that's a sign of some weakness. So you want to get smooth motion. If it's just an ankle sprain, the more you move it, the better. Okay. So you want to do strengthening exercises and, you know, kind of work on your balance. And if you're like, okay, I did some balance work, I did these exercises, I'm going to go for a walk. Like, how does that feel? Yeah. Snowboard boots are pretty supportive, but if you're feeling it, then it's not quite there yet.
Like, it's not hurting when I walk anymore, which is great. But I went like snowboarding and on Friday and it was super painful. So I stopped. But then on Saturday and Sunday I rode and it was fine.
Yeah.
No. But I haven't been splitboarding. I've just been riding the mountain like half day.
I think you're fine to splitboard. as long as you're not doing anything like super steep, like that side hilling, you know what I mean? Where you might, that's where I think like your ankle gets kind of wrenched. So I would kind of like stick to a tour where you know the skin track's going to be like relatively flat and you're not going to go up any steep side hill.
Okay.
Anything slippery where you're going to have to like really dig those ankles in. So maybe just keep it super mellow. And then make sure like if you try those like band exercises or something like that, that you can stabilize your ankle, or if you stand on something squishy like a Bosu ball or even like a stack of pillows, can you maintain your stability without it rolling in and hurting?
Okay.
So, I mean, the thing with ankle sprains is like you have to get back to activity for them to get better. But you have to like do it in a way that doesn't cause swelling, because if it swells, it will delay healing.
Okay.
Like the more you do that swells your ankle, the longer it'll take to heal. So swelling is a good guide.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question about like snowboarding stances, I guess. I didn't realize that's what the canted pucks were for. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But you think that any stance, like either forward stance or duck or standard stance, is better for knee health or positioning, or is that kind of, unknown?
Well, I think like everyone has different mechanics. We all have different hips. And if you like, I don't know, CrossFitters are crazy. They're like, oh, you have to have this perfect like cookie cutter squat form. It's like, no, everybody's hips are different. Everybody's ankles and knees are different. So you need to find the stance that's best for you. And my rule of thumb is like, I want my knees to track over my toes. And I'm naturally kind of like slightly bow-legged and a little bit duck-footed. So my stance is ducked. And when I go into kind of like a squat, my knees are tracking over.
Mm-hmm.
And my resort board, I have the canted footbeds. So they're kind of like on your board, they kind of angle you in like that. Because if you have a wide stance, because you want a wide stance for stability, but your feet are wider than your knees can spread, that can kind of cause that knee pain. So that canting allows you to have a wider stance, but it puts your knees in a position where they track over your toes. So I think it's just a matter of kind of playing around with it.
Yeah.
Like
whatever's most comfortable.
Yeah, like just don't even put your boots on, just like stand in your board and just kind of like bend.
Yeah.
Kind of like where you're at. And and so much of that is like when we talk about like perfect form, when you become an instructor, it's almost kind of like robotic and mechanical looking. Of course, you break all of those rules as soon as you like butter or like pow slash, or you know what I mean? You just kind of want 90% of your riding to be in that good position, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I didn't know about those insoles either. Those are pretty cool, the canted ones.
Yeah, just like any arch support. I put them in all my ski boots and snowboard boots.
Yeah.
Never did before.
Oh, sorry. Do they have something similar for riding just a normal board as the canted pucks for splitboarding?
So a lot of just normal snowboard bindings are already canted.
Okay.
Like I have ride bindings and they're canted. Like the foam that your foot sits on, it's like wider on the outside and thinner on the inside. So it's kind of almost like a wedge shaped footbed, like where your boot sits.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, unless anybody has any other questions, that's all we have for today. That was a super awesome presentation. I'm so glad that I was here for it. Thanks, Kelly. Thanks, Jamie. And thanks, everybody, for joining us today. And keep an eye out for more of these because there's going to be a lot more coming up.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I had a lot of fun putting this together. It's really fun to get to know you guys, and I hope you got something out of it. So
yeah, and lastly, we want to have ways to contact you. So if you have Instagram or Facebook or an email where people can reach you at, if you could let us know. I know Jamie has 2 Instagrams. So if you guys can share that for everybody, that'd be great.
Yeah, I can maybe on the like women who splitboard thing, I can put, I don't know, you can find me on there, or my Instagram is just K Moberly. But if you guys have any questions about anything, like maybe you didn't think about it now and you want to follow up on something that I talked about, you can definitely send me a message and reach out. Love to nerd out with all this stuff. So,
And
yeah.
then
I
Jamie,
loved learning from you, Kelly. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you. I love the yoga. That was awesome.
Oh, okay, good. I posted my Instagram handle on my website. I rent out stand-up paddle boards in the summer, so you can find me on the website or Facebook, the Women Who Splitboard Colorado group.
Jamie got me to do some yoga on the supboard, so that was pretty interesting. I did not
Great.
fall in, so I'm pretty stoked about that.
Yeah, it was really fun.
There we go. There's my Instagram. I just put it in the chat. And then I'm on Facebook.
Cool.
I love stand-up paddleboarding. It's the best.
Let's all go this summer.
I got one now.
Yay!
I love it.
I've never
It's so
been.
much fun. The
Done.
best.
We'll have to meet up. We'll have to make a meetup.
That would be
Go
awesome.
in the water.
Down.
That was like the only way I stayed sane being pregnant. It was like the one thing I could do.
That's awesome.
I always say everything gets better on the water.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much. That was so
Great.
awesome.
Thank you.
That was
Have a
awesome.
good night, everybody.
You girls
Have a
kick
good
ass.
night.
Good night.
Thank you so much, ladies. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Sarah's making me dinner.